Actually, Hatha Yoga is Ha and Ta are two mantras. Yeah, like Om is a mantra. Many mantras there. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Mani Padme Hum. So many mantras. The mantras are different formulas. They are formulas explaining the deeper metascience. The deeper aspect of science. I hear science in the sense of the organic culture of science. So Hatha Yoga is Ha and Ta. There are two aspects of the mantra. And actually these two mantras, if we understand, it leads to Tantra. Tantric aspect of the practice. So Hatha is the balance of, they usually say, the moon and the sun, or the yin and the yang. Yin and yang, everybody can understand much easily. The yin-yang and the balance. So the balance of yin-yang is the balance of our energy system latent in ourselves that we are talking as prana. So this Hatha Yoga is actually Tantra Yoga. There is I would say the DNA of Tantra Yoga is the Ha and Ta. Yeah, so like that. So when we look at it, what happened was the history of this Hatha Yoga, people couldn't understand this text. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika was a very difficult text. It's written in small formulas. Scholars still struggle with this idea. There are many books written on, yoga came from the 19th century or just about yesterday or something like this. It's not true because they can't understand the Hatha. They can't understand the meaning. So when you understand the meaning, you know that it is connected to the Vedas. It is very far in history. So when you look at it, the whole culture of yoga was difficult to understand. So in the past, almost last century, the relationship between India and the Indian culture, like yoga, tantra, etc., was studied from at least the 17th century. It started with the missionaries coming to India, the Christian missionaries from Italy, Portugal, everybody was in India. So they started the initial questioning. And then it was followed up by certain scholars. There are many scholars like Arthur Schopenhauer, up to Nietzsche. They were all following all these things. They were reading all these things. The books were translated in the 1800 into Latin, French, German. So it already was a world culture then. So that moved into the yogic culture. So the hippies came to India. The hippies came to learn and see like how these people are so friendly to each other. India was composed of Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, whatever. They were a big jumbled up group of people. And they were able to live together. And so the hippies wanted this as their life model. They came and they were studying. So they took some practices. They met whoever they met in the beach in Goa or in Bihar or somewhere, whoever they met. They understood that as yoga. And they thought that was Hatha Yoga, and they took back to America. Yeah. So that aspect of yoga is what was going on in the name of Hatha Yoga. But it was like, an aspect of yoga. It is not like we are talking the organic aspect, the pranic aspect, all this they missed. Because they were more interested in, expressing life, because they felt that they were repressed all along in the Western world. In fact, they were saying that because of repression, we go to wars, this, that. So they want the Western world to get out of this repressed experience and to express freely as human beings. So that was a whole culture of the time. So they came to India, they did whatever yoga as Hatha Yoga. But when you go and study the yoga system, then you see Hatha Yoga is actually a tradition. It's a wholesome tradition. It's a complicated system and a compact system in one sense. So that is Tantra Yoga, but the way we do is very different from what the hippie does for yoga. the hippie wants to express. So even in the yoga class, they will be like, just an example that I always give, the snake, the cobra posture. The hippie will be just sliding on the floor, and the guru will be like confused, like what happened to this guy, And the yoga schools, they have definite explanation of this cobra posture or the bhujangasana, So this, to the people of that time was like crazy. Yogis are crazy. This is where we get the name that yogis are crazy people, But it's actually the hippie that made yoga funny. The thing is that as we study further, if you study further, you realize there are traditions, and the traditions are holding the knowledge base of the system, and therefore it's very different from what the hippies were doing or what new systems of yoga they were creating in the modern world. The new systems of yoga was not only created in the American world, but also in India itself. The demand of the Western population made the Indians create yoga for that demand. It's like now it's muscular yoga, and then the Indians will create a muscular yoga system. And then if you go into, now it is the soft yoga, like the Yin yoga, then the Indians will create a Yin system. But the problem is, they don't know the traditional systems of yoga. Very few teachers are alive. Hatha Yoga is Tantra Yoga. It is true, because I just was saying, the Yin-Yang, the balance of the Yin and the Yang. In Sanskrit, it is Shiva Shakti. The whole concept is Shiva Shakti. So you can see that, Carl Jung, the philosopher, psychologist, was trying to understand this. So he was talking animals and all this kind of stuff. So he was already into this understanding of Hatha Yoga, and he came to India about 6-7 times. He actually came over a dozen times, but he always says only 6 times. And, so he came a lot of times to study these things and to understand this whole concept of animals, archetypes, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, when we go back to our question, Hatha Yoga is certainly understood as Tantra Yoga. Tantra, it's as I said, it's the DNA of the Tantra world. The DNA for the practice aspect. The philosophy is not written here. And it is, this is what earlier question I was saying, like, this DNA is in the Vedas, But then the Western, I use the word Western in the sense that modern scholars didn't appreciate this because they cannot understand the Veda. The Veda is written in prayers, and so they cannot understand. So they were looking for literal reading, not formulas. They can't understand formulas. That is the problem. So now we have the whole culture of yoga that they are saying is like 17th century or whatever. But I can prove to you, to anybody, that it is very old in the Vedic culture. So yoga was always there. And so why I'm saying this is for you to appreciate Patanjali in a different form. Patanjali is talking about this yoga. He's not talking about any ascetic, this, that. They are all modern intrusions in India. The Patanjali, if you read the text carefully, on the 3rd chapter, he's talking about the chakras, very seriously he's talking about chakras. And this is often not understood because they didn't read the Patanjali properly. Because Patanjali is 194 or 96 phrases. Different schools read it. One school read it as 94, the other school read it as 96. So when you look seriously, it is a work of Tantra. It's not a work of yoga at all. Yoga is the practical aspect of it. So, Patanjali is also a Tantric yoga system. I can prove all these things, but let's, we meet again and I will explain more details.
Thank you.